Okay, guys, I got one for you today that's pretty good. I just assume everyone has already come across this and educated themselves on it, but in case you haven't, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what I've learned about this thing called the drama triangle. I'm also going to tie it into some other books I've read and try to draw some parallels and connections there, and as always, just condense it down for quicker listening. So, welcome back to my channel. This is Russell, the Last Man. Thanks for listening, guys. Before I get into this, a couple of you have reached out and possibly wanted to share your story. I'm a little weird about online privacy, and YouTube doesn't have a private messaging service, so I guess the best thing is to reach out to me through my Reddit handle. I am OKGuidance6491. That's OKGuidance6491. Message me there, and then we can talk about how to maybe have you on this thing and share your story with other people. I think the more the better. There's not a lot of resources for men, and men need to hear other men's stories, and it helps a lot to hear it in your own words and not just through text. All right, jumping into the drama triangle. If you're new to this, this was written by a guy, he's a psychiatrist back in 1968, a man named Stephen Karpman. He was always interested in drama and writing of scripts, and basically how we play games in relationships. And he came up finally with his model that really stuck, this idea of a three-sided, it's a triangle, coming up with three different actors or three different people playing roles. The three roles are rescuer, victim, and persecutor. Basically, two of the roles are in a one-up position, and one is in the one-down position. The victim is in the one-down position, and both the rescuer and the persecutor are in the one-up position. Let's start off with the persecutor. This role is defined as someone who is feeling self-righteous, has a desire for control and power. Because they are insecure, they are wanting to feel superior to other people, and therefore they are critical, they are controlling, they are dominating. And of course, they are not self-aware of their own flaws, and by attacking someone else, it makes them feel better about themselves. The victim is in the one-down role. They see themselves as helpless. They see everyone else as not wanting to help them. They take no accountability. They believe they don't have any agency. This would define someone like an addict who can't see that only they can change their own behavior. Often they are looking for others to swoop in. They're very good at baiting others to swoop in and rescue them because they see themselves as helpless. Again, they are not self-aware of their own agency. The rescuer. This person wants to do good, but is often trying to save or rescue other people to avoid looking at themselves. Again, they are not self-aware of their own flaws, and by wanting to protect or save or rescue someone else, they feel like they are improving their moral superiority or their moral position. This is the classic savior complex. You could make parallels to Christ in this, but I think this is part of our culture and our religion growing up, so that helps, and it's reinforced in movies. This would be considered the classic enabler by AA people. This would be the codependent person, the person who needs the victim or the addict to save or rescue or enable in order to make themselves feel better about themselves. Another modern take on this is the classic Captain Save-A-Ho. This is the guy that hangs out at strip clubs and sees these damaged little birds that he wants to repair because somehow it makes him feel better about himself. Now, it's important to note that these roles are not fixed by any means. In fact, they are often very fluid, and people will rotate through these roles, going from victim to enabler to persecutor. It's really easy to switch, and it's usually the way it's done. It's part of the game. You don't even have to have three people. This could happen with two people. Like a platonic example would be, let's say, a father and a son. The father's trying to get the son to do his homework, and he says, he's being harsh on him, he's controlling him, he's acting morally superior, he's putting the son down for not getting his homework done. The son slides into victim role and says, you're always attacking me, and I wasn't given the right information or resources from my teacher to do this. I'm not able to do my homework. So then the father recognizes that he's being too harsh, moves himself into the rescuer role, and says, well, I just love you, son, and I just care about you, and I want to take care of you and make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. The son lashes back and is now moving into the persecutor role and says, well, you're always too mean to me, and you're always too harsh on me, and I don't like it when you come at me like this. So then the father slides into the victim role and says, well, you don't know what it's like being a dad. One day you'll see how hard it is, and one day you'll realize how tough this is on me trying to live my own life and get you to have your, to fulfill your responsibilities. All right, so there's an easy example that's not involving men and women. When it does involve men and women, I heard this best from an author named A.W.F.U.L. Marshall. He was on the show called The Wife Expert, which is run by Lori McDermott. Y'all should really check that out. She has way more interviews with women whose husbands have gone through a midlife crisis, it's understandable. She's a woman and she communicates more with other women. She does have a few interviews with men whose wives have gone through a midlife crisis. Unfortunately, I don't find her advice to be as helpful as she thinks it is because she's a woman and she sees things from a female point of view. She'll give advice to the men like, well, aren't you calling up your old in-laws? Like, you should call them up. You should get them on board. I think that doesn't work very well for men because it makes us look like victims. Men don't get much sympathy. If anything, you'll just come off as looking weak and essentially looking like a little bitch. But anyway, she did this interview with A.W.F.U.L. Marshall, and he put this perfectly in the context of marriage, affairs, and divorces, where he says, your ex-wife or soon-to-be ex-wife views herself as the victim, views you, her husband, as the persecutor, and views the affair partner as the rescuer. Whereas you feel that you are the victim. You feel like the affair partner is the persecutor. He's interloped into your marriage, and you view your ex or soon-to-be ex as your rescuer. If she would just stop doing this and reverse her decision and come back to you, then everything would be fixed and she can save you. And the affair partner likely buys into her story, views her as a victim, wants to rescue her from this bad marriage where you are the bad guy, the persecutor. Now, the problem, anytime this happens, there's as A.W.F.U.L. Marshall puts it, there is no winning position inside this triangle. The only winning position is to get outside of the triangle. Most people agree that the only way you do this is through accountability. And before you say what I think you're already thinking, I'll get to that. Hold on a minute. I will say this came to mind because I just watched a video from Homath where he describes the drama triangle quite accurately, but he says that you should play the victim, play into the drama triangle in order to beat women at their own game because they only communicate their emotions. I strongly disagree with that. I believe, again, I've said, I believe in the truth, and to play this game is to play a losing game, and to make yourself the victim only makes you act more feminine and more like women, and that's just not going to work due to our own biology and natural sexual attraction preferences. I'll get to that in a minute. There was another guy, I think his name was Bryce, in 1990. He did a follow-up to this, and he called it the winner's triangle. He defined the roles as nurturer or carer instead of rescuer, assertive or the assertive or the challenger as opposed to the persecutor, and the vulnerable instead of the victim. Basically, these are just three lighter versions of those same three roles, but essentially the distinction they have, you'll notice right away, they're all self-aware and they take responsibility. I mean, I think those two go hand in hand. To be self-aware is to automatically be forcing yourself to take accountability. Okay, now to the inherent problems with this that you're probably already thinking of. Well, how can we ever fix this if women automatically always view themselves as a victim? There's a couple of things going on there. I've already said in a previous video, there was a book written by Richard Driscoll, PhD, back in the late 90s, back when the psychology field was very interested and friendly to the idea of evolutionary psychology. They've since moved on from that, and now they're fairly strongly against it, although I feel like it's coming back again. Driscoll argued, essentially for evolutionary reasons, women are programmed to view men as privileged and powerful. And likewise, men play along with that because it gives them the mating opportunities they need. Both men and women play into this game of viewing men as more privileged and more powerful because it serves both of their needs for bearing children, for having families, and furthering the species. Automatically, powerful puts you in the persecutor role. You're seeking power, you're controlling. And privileged automatically puts them in the victim role. By the very nature of you being privileged, that means that they are underprivileged, that they are an oppressed class, right? So if that's biologically the case, then it's very difficult for women to ever see themselves anywhere other than victim. Mostly it's going to make them see themselves as victims, but they can also be rescuers or nurturers, especially as it comes to like wanting to, on a personal level, wanting to be there for their man and be a loving partner. But many men forget that when they ask for that type of help from a woman and expect her to nurture him, she's not sexually attracted to him. She's playing the mother role, and no healthy woman wants to have sex with her children. So if you are acting like a child and needing her to fulfill that nurturing mother role, you just need to understand that in that moment, there is no sexuality for her about it. Ironically, she's only going to be attracted to someone who is powerful, but it very easily puts you into the persecutor role. So there's a problem right there just based with our biology. The further problems we get are from outside society, Hollywood, and then greater culture. Obviously, Hollywood, since drama is what you need to make a good movie, the drama triangle is a beautiful vehicle to make good drama. We've all seen it growing up. We already have the biological inclination to be this way, and then now we are reinforcing it with the images from movies and TV shows that we are raised with, and it conditions us to think that this is some type of normal relationship dynamic when it's actually very unhealthy. On top of that, our greater society has become very much a victim-oriented society. I don't have to tell you that. I mentioned a guy named David Shackleton in one of my previous videos. He wrote a quick paper. Everyone should read it. It's a fast read. It's called Feminism Exposed. While I think some of his rhetoric is a bit harsh, I covered most of the topics in there. I forgot to mention that he thinks we had a fundamental shift in America after World War II, where basically from all the atrocities that the world witnessed, Western culture was turned off by masculine institutions, started to resent them, started to be suspect of them, and instead switched to a feminine paradigm where we believed that the women were actually more virtuous and better, and then if there was evil in the world, we were probably going to find men in control of that institution. This plays right into our biology. We've always, in some level, had this myth of sugar and spice and everything nice, And like I said, Driscoll said evolutionarily, we see men as powerful and privileged. So the problem is this creates a dynamic where the sins of women, as Shackleton puts it, go hidden and are deceptive or manipulative. The victim role, by its very definition, is manipulative. It is always putting out the bait for the rescuer to come in and save them. And it sees themselves as being oppressed, being victims, being helpless, having no agency. So that naturally plays into a woman's psychology, evolutionary psychology. But on top of that, it allows for the manipulation and the deception to take place of female evils. Like Shackleton's example was the idea that you just wait till your father gets home. And then when the father gets home, she says, you give that one a kiss, you pat that one on the head, and that one deserves a spanking. So who's really in charge there, right? This is the woman pretending to have moral superiority and therefore be the one who can be judge and jury, but leave it to the man to be the executioner. So he's the bad guy because he's actually carrying out the punishment, but she is the one who has already made the judgment. And like I said at the beginning, self-righteousness is a defining characteristic of the persecutor. But the woman will not see herself this way because she's biologically programmed not to on some level, and then now society is reinforcing the idea that women can't be bad, only men can be bad. So even though she's wielding control, she's pretending to have moral superiority, therefore she is the persecutor, she's painting herself as a victim. And of course they use history, they use propaganda, they use denial, clever psychological terms to to pretend they aren't victims even while they are playing the victim. I mean, while I was making this video, my antivirus reminder came on, and it's like you want to protect yourself from the bad guys, and there's this shadowy figure of someone in a trench coat and a hat, and it's clearly a masculine figure. I mean, we're already born with this, in our genes to some degree, and then now we're reinforcing it with society. So the one other thing I want to mention is I'm worried about what I heard Homath say today about thinking that you should play into the victim game because it's the only language women know how to speak. I agree with a lot of what he said, but I completely disagree with that. You've got several problems there. Number one, it's wrong to be in the drama triangle to begin with. And I think the victim is the weakest role in the drama triangle. And not to mention, if you are a man, if you try to play the victim, then you are going to be a big turnoff to women, just biologically. Like I said, there is a need for them to see us as powerful and privileged, or it's built into them at least. I don't like the privileged part of it. I think the powerful part of it is at least useful for a man. I mean, in some ways we are inherently more powerful, but of course we are all flawed humans and we have our weaknesses. But I don't think we should play into them. I think we should be as powerful as we can be, but all the while being self-aware, being aware of our own flaws, our own failings, and not having that insecurity where we seek to be in the one-up position in order to feel superior to someone else. Be aware of your insecurities. Be aware of your own flaws. Realize when you're trying to challenge or help someone instead of attacking them and judging them. It's very easy for us, especially being like me. A lot of guys are so ruled by logic, it just goes, you just think, well, it just part of intelligence should be making judgments. Yes, you should be able to ascertain things, but judgment involves a moral aspect that I think we all need to be careful with. Definitely, we do not want to play the victim and to try to be the weak one. That is the problem with our society. It's trying to encourage everyone to be the victim in order to have moral superiority. I'll tie this into some other stuff I've read. I mean, if you've ever read Nietzsche, the big horse he's always beating to death is essentially that there was a morality before Jesus, and Jesus came along and flipped morality on its head. It used to be the strong can do whatever they can get away with, and the weak must suffer what they must suffer. And then Jesus comes along and basically says, no, that's actually not true. The meek shall inherit the earth. And it's harder for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven. And there is a place called heaven where everyone who has been oppressed and weak shall enjoy paradise. And it's the wicked who shall be punished, which is often the strong. It's really no coincidence to me that Christianity first spread widely among women and slaves, two oppressed classes in the Roman Empire. But the problem is that this inherently goes against some parts of human nature. We are, by nature, victims and persecutors and rescuers, and Jesus tells us basically to only be rescuers or to be victims and never be a persecutor. It's kind of difficult just based on your hardwiring as a man. I don't completely agree with Nietzsche. I don't completely agree with the Jesus message, but I do think Nietzsche was correct to point it out. And ironically, it is the extreme liberal people today who usually deny they have any religious beliefs. They will admit openly that they are not Christians and they are not church-going people. But they are ironically using Jesus' message to try to gain moral superiority, to say that if I am weak or if I am oppressed, therefore I am better than you, which is hilarious because that puts them into the persecutor class. Now, I'm not saying Jesus did this. Jesus was kind of all three. He was kind of above it all in some ways, although he did lose his temper once or twice. But essentially, we've taken this idea that to be weak makes you morally superior, and we run with that, and it seems like everyone is in a competition nowadays to put themselves in the role of oppressed or weak so that they can have power, essentially. And to have power is somehow to be bad, and therefore you should shut up. You should not be allowed to talk. And then, of course, there are the rescuers who I guess you could say are the white knights for feminists or social justice warriors. And clearly what you have there is the virtue signaling everyone talks about, where, again, you want to pretend to have moral superiority because you care so much for these weak people, and you're not looking inside yourself and seeing that you have your own flaws, or even that those victims have their own flaws and that they do have agency and they have chosen to make the choices they make. Autonomy, agency, self-awareness, accountability. As far as you go, I got lucky raising my oldest kid, and I was in the habit of when he called me out on something of saying the words, fair enough. Instead of pulling the I'm the daddy, that's why card, instead I said, you got me there, kiddo. I mean, early on his arguments were pretty weak, but every now and then he hit on something that was true. And I could say to myself, yeah, he's not wrong. He sees one of my bad habits. And thankfully, because of that, the kid, just by reflex, I hear him say as he gets older, fair enough. When I call him out on not doing his homework and he says, I couldn't because of this and this and that. And I was like, well, you played, video games for 4 hours yesterday. I bet you could have done your homework then. And he goes, yeah, fair enough. He's got that self-awareness. Now, I don't have daughters. I would do the same if I have daughters, but I don't get to see young women growing up and finding out when they change. I've talked to other men who have grown daughters, and a lot of them say once the kid hit puberty, they just went crazy and I couldn't talk to him anymore. So I don't know. I'm not really trying not to be a complete chauvinist and misogynist here, but apparently, women, once the hormones kick in and they become full women, a lot of their attitudes and behaviors change. I think women are very comfortable playing the victim or the rescuer. And of course, you see that lots of days with the modern awfuls, but they rarely see themselves as the persecutor. But it's so ironic because it is the victim mentality and the legacy of Jesus that allows them to have moral superiority by playing the victim or the rescuer, which is ironically making them the persecutor. But they're blind to it. Why? Because they don't have self-awareness. The only way to get out of the drama triangle is to have self-awareness, be responsible, have accountability. Now, I'm not saying there aren't women out there that do have accountability. If you get one of them, you're lucky. And also, to get accountability out of a woman, usually the man has to speak to her in her emotional language. That doesn't mean rescue her. And it doesn't mean use guilt or shame like the persecutor would, using feelings as a manipulation tactic. But actually being open and listening to a woman's feelings and communicating that way will usually bring the best out of her, and therefore the woman is more willing to have true accountability. But this is something that has to be practiced by everybody. We are all so naturally wired to fall into this pattern. And then, of course, it's reinforced in just about every single movie we've seen. I mean, even if you take The Matrix, we've got Neo as a Christ-like figure literally about to save humanity from the machines. It's nice. It makes for good drama. We all like to believe in these paradigms or these archetypes. But in real life, it doesn't work like that. We're never going to be savior. Even if we were a savior, we're probably ignoring something about ourselves. And of course, we shouldn't be persecutors or victims. So it's something we all got to work on. That's my thought for the day, guys. Go ahead and reach out to me through Reddit if you want to get a hold of me and hopefully share your story. We'll figure out some way to do it. Either you could write something up or we can do some kind of live stream. I'm still getting used to the technology, despite what I went to school for. I'm really behind the times now with all the new tech. Anyway, that's me. This is Russell signing off. Thanks for watching the channel, The Last Man. I guess if you're listening, go ahead and like and subscribe. Try to get this out to other guys, and hopefully a bunch of guys can share their story. You guys have a good one. I'll see you on the next one.